Jasmine. Today we're going to make pumpkin and sesame seed cakes. This is the perfect treat for the fall time. It is super easy to make, very healthy, and very delicious. Today we're going to make cakes out of pumpkin puree and glutinous rice flour, so it is going to be a very chewy treat. And then we're also going to roll it in some sesame seeds, which makes it very pretty. So let's get started. For the ingredients you will need 300 grams of pumpkin puree, 300 grams of glutinous rice flour, half a cup of white sesame seeds, 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and 80 grams of white sugar. First, we're going to make the pumpkin puree. So I've already peeled my pumpkin, got rid of the seeds and the guts, and I've chopped them up into small pieces. You can chop them up into whatever size you like, but the bigger size it is, the longer it is going to take to cook. And make sure you're not boiling your pumpkin because you don't want too much moisture inside of it or the pumpkin puree is going to be very runny. So now let's get it onto the stove. First, prepare a pot and fill it up with some cold water. I'm going to place in a little rack so the bowl could stand on top of it. And now I'm just going to let it boil. It's been around 15 minutes since this has been steaming, so now to test if it is done, I'm going to insert a fork. You can see it goes in really easily and it's nice and soft. That means it's done. Now turn off the heat and take it out. The pumpkin has been completely cooked, so now even if you steam it, there will still be a lot of moisture inside of this, so I'm going to put it into a sieve to get rid of any extra water. Now that I've gotten rid of the extra moisture inside of the pumpkins, I'm going to mash it up with a fork, but you could also use a potato masher. Now that the pumpkin puree is ready, you could go ahead and measure it out to see how much it weighs. And that is the exact measurement for the glutinous rice flour, because today the recipe is super simple. It is 1 part pumpkin puree and 1 part glutinous rice flour. And this is why it's really important to get rid of the extra water, because that might change the consistency of the final dough. Today I have 300 grams of pumpkin puree, so I also measured out 300 grams of the glutinous rice flour. And to that, I'm going to add 80 grams of white granulated sugar to add a bit of sweetness. So you want to add this in while it's still warm so the sugar can sort of dissolve. It is all very important that you add the ingredients in while the pumpkin puree is still nice and warm. And once you add in the sugar, you can see that the pumpkin puree has become a little runnier. Don't worry about that though, it's normal. Now I'm going to slowly add in the glutinous rice flour. I'm using glutinous rice flour here today, so it's nice and chewy, but you could also use regular flour if you want to. Now I'm just going to mix it in until it no longer sticks to your hands and it forms a dough. So start slow because the glutinous rice flour is going to go everywhere. At first it might not seem like it's going to come together at all, but just keep mixing. And you can see I sort of like to cut it up a little to break up the big lumps. I switched over to my hands, so I'm just rubbing it between my fingertips to break up the pieces of pumpkin puree so it can absorb the glutinous rice flour easier. And again, it might not look like it's going to come together, but it will. Just be patient with it. When it is formed into a ball and it doesn't stick to your hands anymore, it is ready, so now we can move on to the next step. I prepared a cutting board and I'm going to be cutting the dough into equal small pieces, but if you don't want to do that, you can also just eyeball it. So I'm going to divide this in half. roll it into a snake. Now I'm going to cut it into equal sections. And the best way to do that is cut the whole thing in half, and then the two sections in half again, and then in half again. To get something like this. So I cut 8 pieces today. Now we're going to take each section and then flatten it. You could use a rolling pin if you want to, but I don't think that's necessary. So you will get some cracked edges, but you don't need to try to make sure that it's nice and smooth because, again, this is a quite dry dough, so it would crack. Now we're going to roll it around in some white sesame seeds. And I press it down a little to make sure that it actually sticks. Now that I have dipped all of the dough inside of the sesame seeds, I could get it onto the stove and cook it. Today I'm going to be cooking it in some unsalted butter, but you could also just use whatever type of flavorless oil you want. And we're going to be cooking this on medium-low heat. First, turn the heat onto medium heat and add on some butter. Again, you could use flavorless oil if you want to. Once the butter has melted, I'm just going to spread it around so it's nice and evenly distributed. Now evenly place on the little cakes. I'm going to be cooking 8 of them at a time. Once the other side is nice and golden brown, you can flip it over and let the other side cook until it is again nice and golden brown. And you want to make sure you have enough butter in here. You can add some more when you flip to the other side just to make sure that there's enough. After each time you finish each batch, make sure to clean off the pan with some kitchen towels so the pan is nice and fresh for the next batch. You can even wash it if you want to. Get rid of all the excess sesame seeds. That's how you make pumpkin and sesame seed cakes. This is smelling really nice. It smells a lot like butter, sesame seeds, and pumpkin. It took about 3 minutes for me to cook on each side, but it really depends on the thickness and the size of your cakes. This is a perfect treat for the fall season, and I suggest you to eat this while it's warm and it's nice and soft. If you kept it in the fridge or somewhere that is very cold, it is going to harden up and doesn't taste as good. So before you eat it, you can microwave it for around 10 seconds just for it to soften up. So I hope you could try this out. Thanks for watching and see you guys next time. Bye!